And this kind of leads us on maybe to Alex Ferguson's disciples here, because there's sort of there's 37, we think. There's probably even more, out there. And in terms of the names, just to reel off sort of some of the guys that have done really well, and we sort of had that sort of second level of Carrick and McKenna. Although Carrick, I think, is straight off, because he was an ex-player for them. But you got Phil Neville, Gary Neville, Mark Robbins, Darren Ferguson, Roy Keane, Solskjaer, Steve Bruce, Mark Hughes, who's managed a lot of games. Obviously, he's at Bradford at the moment. Rob Edwards was someone that he managed, if you want to keep going with it. And actually, let me know as well if you do spot any ones that I've missed here. And Laurent Blanc, who, of course, was the manager for PSG, so has done pretty well himself as well. But overall, it's pretty disappointing, isn't it? If you think of that the old adage of, if you're a great captain, great leader on the pitch, then you're going to be able to do it as a manager. And Ferguson, for someone who's obviously provided an environment that's very well understood, was one that allowed players to flourish and win. What's gone on here? Why is there such failure when overall? Let's be honest. You could chuck in Alex McLeish, Gordon Strachan maybe in there as well in terms of times at Aberdeen who've done some good stuff. And look, it's tough to be a successful manager, but you would have imagined there would have been a bit more success. No,
it's a weird one. I want to start by giving Sir Alex some credit, really, because you need to be at a club for a length of time, and you need to have a particular level of success for anyone to actually be considered one of your disciples. Sure. So ultimately, I'm thinking, who could possibly have disciples? There might be. I mean, you might say latterly Guardiola, okay, and Mourinho. In terms of the longevity, success. Maybe Ancelotti might end up having some disciples in the end of it, but there aren't going to be that many. Bielsa, it's a good one. Arsene Wenger, have the players that played for him gone on to have great managerial careers? I can't think of any. Not really. So the fact that they've had kind of middling managerial careers, I'm almost like, he's done quite well.
Yeah. Is this one where the style of play of both those managers? When you talk about Arsene Wenger and Fergie, we can chuck Arsene Wenger in there as well. For Arsene Wenger, it was it's called relationism, isn't it? And you see that with Ancelotti, and he's doing the same thing at Real Madrid and doing it beautifully. But I think there's I think that's a talent in itself in terms of being able to understand. Okay, we're not going to have this really structured positionalism that you see with, say, Pep Guardiola, and they're going to go where they want. To use that word I keep hearing all the time, vibes. It's just going to be a bit more about the vibes. And with Arsene Wenger, it was like that. You see that gorgeous, play all the time with them. With Fergie, it was always attacking football, but it didn't truly have its own, rubber stamped ideology. Yeah. That it was sort of, okay, take this player out, bring that next player in. And maybe the sort of broad strokes of British football, this idea of generally two up top, generally great wingers, Kanchelskis, Giggs, Sharp and Beckham and all those kind of players, then two good midfielders who could do a bit of everything. Why? Yeah. Do you think it's the fact that when it comes to disciples, actually you just need a bit of a blueprint? And for Fergie, it was maybe it was a simpler time.
I do think that. I think when Ferguson decided to retire, he kind of chose the right time, because football has changed dramatically since. And really, it boils down to a couple of things for me, which are technology and sports science. And I think technology plays a part in the sports science as well.
Do you think there's a dwindling of Fergie's style of leadership and a power of it? Because it is such a tactical sport now.
Well, that's it. I think when you look at Ferguson's leadership and what made him a success as a coach, it was individual, personality-driven coaching and management. You hear all the stories about how he had someone at every nightclub and he kept an eye on his players. He'd pop round to their houses and he'd tell them about themselves and all this stuff, Yeah. And it was always about a culture of following whatever he said. And I don't think now if you did many, if you went on many leadership courses, they'd say the best way to run your organisation is to basically be the king, mold everything around everything that comes out of your mouth, and people following that to a T. You'd be like, right.
With an element of fear, right?
Yeah, with an element of fear. But ultimately, I think because they were a winning culture, because they had so much success, you were going to listen to him anyway, really. You know, it wasn't really about being scared of him, sorry. It was more being scared to lose out on all the trophies and success and money that came with being part of Manchester United. And it was essentially his way or the highway. I'm not taking away from him as a coach and a tactician, but what I'm saying is, if there are types of cults, if you like, and types of disciple, there are, I'm sure, some cults in history where you followed the person. And where you were disciples of the person, whatever they said you did.
Right.
And there were others where you were disciples of the text, if you like.
Interesting.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I love that.
Right? And I think that if you look at Johan Cruyff, you look at the history of Barcelona as an institution, it has been about the text.
That's
right?
so good, Hugh.
It's been about the text. So whether it was Johan Cruyff in charge or whether Xavi, Enrique, or whoever's been in charge since him, you know, it's always been about what are our
yes, yeah, well, I'll add 10.
Yeah,
I've got the word now.
Yeah, I don't want to offend anyone, but you know
sure.
what I mean.
Yeah, loads of religions are available.
Yeah, exactly. Look, but what are the concepts that we believe in?
Yeah,
you know, and ultimately that's the tactics that have come out of Barcelona, come out of the way that they've run the academy, La Masia, over the years, and everyone that comes through that system stays true to that. So it doesn't matter. It won't matter with respect when they all pass away in terms of that organisation and the football that it wants to play. And actually, I think Manchester United were about Ferguson. So when he walked out of the door, it was like, what do we do now? It was like an empty room, basically.
Well, so, I mean, I want to come back to some of the ripple effects from Man United. We'll do that. But because we're talking about Johan Cruyff, I think all roads do seem to lead to the text of Johan Cruyff. It obviously comes from his mind, and Guardiola speaks about him so much, and he talks about his first year as a coach at Barcelona. He would go and talk to him time and time again. The one thing I did think, just while it's in my mind, I wonder the ruthlessness of Guardiola in the last 18 months. I think that element of fear, I think that feels quite Fergie to me.
It is.
It feels very Fergie to me. Now, Johan Cruyff is always sort of talking about more and more and more. You need to understand why you're getting better, and that can allow you to have that desire to continue to get better. But in terms of that understanding of freshness and to retain those standards, like with the Cancelo change or Foden being out of the team for quite some time this year, all those changes, Sterling being sort of, you know, discarded, Jesus a little bit as well. It's interesting that idea of needing to. I heard a great analogy the other day of if you've got a swimming pool with like beautiful water in it, you still need fresh water after a while. Like you have to keep, otherwise it's just going to get stale. Water, you know what I mean. But with Guardiola, there is that one element I do think, and there are some elements. Just to say quickly, Man United, obviously, the academy at Man United has obviously been that lives on in terms of the legacy of Ferguson. But literally, tactics on the pitch, it's not as concrete, is it?
That's the point that I'm making. You know, the academy at Manchester United, although it has produced good players, good quality players, because young players in the area would want to play for Manchester United. We've obviously got a particular level of resource as well. We I'm sure have had good coaches in the academy during the last, 7 or 8 years since Ferguson left, whatever it is now, but probably 10. But ultimately, like I said, the text at Barcelona, which didn't just tell you how to play football, but told you, how to think about football. Was on a different level. And actually, you don't go and watch Man United's kids now and think, oh, that came from Ferguson. You just don't.
No.
And I'm not saying, this is nothing against Manchester United. There's nothing against Ferguson, because I think they were brilliant. But, by the way, we're talking about what a handful of clubs in the shape of what Barcelona have ever managed to do.
Yes.
So it's not like, oh, well, Brighton are doing... No, like,
yeah.
no one else has managed
Yeah.
to rubber stamp a style of football, a tactics, a way of life in football, if you like, onto their organisation in the way that probably Barcelona and Ajax have in the last century. So, the fact that Ferguson didn't achieve it is nothing against him.
No, and if anything, to a point, kind of his ability to sort of feel it out a little bit and bring in the right coaches at the right time, and then utilise his strengths, which is that leadership of the group. I think that's really impressive to be able to do that. Whereas, with Guardiola, when he talks about himself and him being a bit of a genius, everything he does is often from that playbook, and so you don't have you don't need new answers if those answers are kind of are previously there. And you've seen that with, even with John Stones and his sort of change. That's something that Cruyff had done in the past as well. Let's run through some of these ripple effects in terms of Sir Alex's disciples. If Gary Neville never fails at Valencia, he may never have become one of the faces of Sky Sports. Might not have stepped into the breach at Salford.
Yeah.
Do you believe in this one?
I got to say, and it's probably going to be the case for a load of these, not just Gary Neville, that this is the thing that I mean about the individual rather than the text. All of them, when they took their jobs, the clubs would have been thinking, is he the next Sir Alex Ferguson?
Yeah.
And when it's an individual, character-led style of management, ultimately these people were not Sir Alex as individuals, and they could have been great coaches had it been more about the tactics and the football.
Yep.
But because they went into every club and were like, I have to stamp who I am as a person onto these players, they have to be beholden to me. They have to, basically follow all of my instructions to a T. Anyone wavers from that, they're out the door, because that's what they'd known. I think that counted against them because there was only one Sir Alex Ferguson.
Yeah. You guys will know, listen to the podcast, I talk about Succession a lot. And at the moment, do you watch Succession?
No.
But
Too close to home.
You're missing out. Okay. Yeah, fair. So the Logan Roy, actually I'm going to give it away. Basically, there's these kids that want to be top dogs and they want to behave like the dad, but they can't because whatever they say is not heard in that same voice. And I think you're right. And say someone like Roy Keane's a great example. I think at Sunderland, in that sort of desperate moment, he goes there and they go, tell us what to do and we'll kind of go with it. And it worked. But over a long period of time, you then need to have the the soft touch as well as the hard touch. And Roy Keane wasn't able to do that. And he thought he could go down that Fergie road. And again, it's that translation of the player and what works for you on the pitch in that way to then the management situation. And I think trying to recreate that Fergie style is just so difficult. You're right in terms of all those characters. Just want to say this because he's one of our Spotify brethren. Alex Ferguson went to watch a Wrexham match in which his son Darren, who's actually had a good managerial career as well, just sort of keeps going back to Peterborough, doesn't he? But was playing in that Wrexham game, and Ben Foster was there. So if it wasn't for Darren Ferguson he's quite literally a disciple and a son of him. Then Ben,
he's like a son.
Yeah, he's like a son to him. Then we wouldn't have had Ben Foster in our lives. That's the point I'm trying to get to. Final question on this: So we know Johan Cruyff's probably top of this list, right, in terms of influence on football, British football. Who's had more influence on British football, Pep or Fergie, for you?
I still think we need to let Guardiola's had such a huge effect on world football. Ultimately, you're going to see hints of him in the tactics of virtually every football manager for the next generation of coaches. Everyone will try and replicate something that his team does well because there are so many. I mean, there are so many different facets of what Manchester City under Pep have done and continue to do, and continue to revamp themselves, which is amazing. I think, just to go back to a point you made earlier, Guardiola is taking something from Ferguson. For the first time in his career, he has to do what Ferguson did so well, which was create multiple title-winning, Champions League challenging sides.
Regenerate, yeah. And
he's managed to get some players out, some new players in who bring something slightly different. Amazing, but he's also tweaked his tactics, Guardiola, and he's managed to keep Manchester City.
He's going to have to do that again soon as well, right? Because De Bruyne, Gundogan, two crucial players for them, are going to make way soon enough.
Yeah, but again, can he bring in players that fit that mould, at least to get them to the next? I still think they're another 3 years away. I think we're currently in kind of the second season of the new Manchester City. And they bring in Haaland, they get rid of the likes of Jesus and whatnot. So I think we'll see another couple of tweaks. But ultimately, they might be set for another 3-4 years after that. Even De Bruyne and Gundogan, maybe not at the club.
Final question on this.
I don't know if I answered the last question you asked me.
Go on.
Which was who's going to have more of a legacy?
Oh, sorry, yeah, of course.
If you like, I do think it's going to be Guardiola when all is said and done, because what he's done is so revolutionary. But I actually think Sir Alex Ferguson, again, in his day, every coach wanted their team to play like his team, and he was the answer to what is successful football. So, Guardiola is now what Sir Alex Ferguson was then at the end of his career when the coaching board with all the little tactics is hung up. It's already hung up. But you know what I mean.
So folded up and put in the corner. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Then I think it probably will be Guardiola.